Welcome to All Things Nonlinear Dynamical, talks about the brain and human connection. This show tackles the big questions, overcoming challenges, mental well-being, the power of music and literature, and even cutting-edge brain training tech. Join Craig and his special and amazing guests as they explore the physical and mental landscapes that make us who we are, offering practical tools and broad perspectives to help you navigate your own unique journey. It's going to get weird, it's going to get wonderful, so buckle up and get ready to explore the incredible world within. This episode's very special guest is the magnificent David George Delaney, author of Intrinsic Singing and a kindred spirit of mine as well. Perhaps we can collaborate on a theme song for this show. So, it's time to get this candle properly lit and move on to amazing fun and adventure with our brilliant show host, Craig de Servidor, and the magnificent David George Delaney. Off to you, Craig, and cheers.
Thank you, Freddie. That's a wonderful intro. Appreciate that. Welcome, David.
Greg,
so
hey,
great
how
to
you
have
doing?
you here.
Thank you.
I'm doing fantastic. This is a real treat for me because we get to have a little chat and talk about our nonlinear dynamical journeys, and mostly yours. I'll try not to be too verbose. But I wanted to just let the audience know how we met.
Okay.
And you have been in the field of brain training with Neurooptimal for years.
Yes.
And you have vast experience with that, among many other things. And I got to be kind of like a unofficial mentee of yours. We didn't actually have a chance to meet as much as and interact as much as I wanted. But I've always been fascinated about your take on things, your wisdom, your compassion, and your gentle way of presenting it. It's very wonderful. So it's been a treat for me, and now it's even more of a treat because we're together, and I hope we can move forward with this as well.
Well, for me too. This is a treat for me. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So when we have these podcasts, I'm always curious about how people got into the profession, the place, what jazzes them. I know for myself, there's been a journey, a nonlinear dynamical journey that's brought me to this place where I want to help others because I know what it's like to suffer. Everything's relative. I'm not trying to play the poor me, poor Craig card.
Of course.
But, I've always wanted to help others and myself and my family, to relieve that suffering that happens as a result of, early childhood trauma. It starts
of course. There. Yeah.
So if you would, let us know.
Well, I mean, honestly, it was my saving grace, music and it started with guitar. And I had a paper route. I had, 70 papers I delivered 6 nights a week after school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had, my father, insisted I put the money in the bank. So I had some money. And so I was able to buy a guitar and pay for, guitar lessons. And it sort of started there. And then, and then at that time, the Catholic Church was, suddenly they were doing folk masses. And suddenly I was in a seminary at the time. And suddenly they asked me, would you, be part of this? And then suddenly we were traveling. And, so there I was in front of people with my guitar and we were singing. And I really enjoyed that. And because I was a very inhibited person and low self-esteem and all of that. And suddenly it put me in a position where I was out front. And that was a whole different energy for me. And I think that's pretty much where it started. And music was my saving grace because I did not do well in school. I was very dyslexic at a time where they didn't even know the word dyslexia.
Exactly.
You were just stupid, or as Sister Mary Annunciata said, you were a moron.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. So music and wanting to sing, etc., really were my path. I mean, literally my path.
So wonderful. Real briefly, I know what you mean. if I go to a bookstore and things aren't really well organized, everything bleeds into itself. And it's like, I have a friend, may rest in peace, who just we'd go to the bookstores, and it was a treat for him.
Yeah.
And it was, like dismaying to me, how he could pick out the books and so on and so forth. And all I saw was just, this blend of information that was befuddling.
Yeah, so that was me, and then one thing leads to another. I had a draft number of 6 at the last year of the Vietnam War, and I was going, and my Aunt Colleen, my dad's sister, was one of those networkers, and she happened to say, "Oh, I met a colonel from the Air Force in town, and he said there's something called job guarantee." And I was like, "What?" And when I looked into it, yeah, I had to give 4 years versus 2 years, but I didn't have to go to Vietnam and kill people or get killed and get, into drugs or whatever, because I was a very vulnerable person. So that kind of worked out.
So
and
I just wanted to let
I got into the Air Force.
It's a little bit laggy live, but it
no problem. So I got into the Air Force, and she mentioned this thing that he said, which was special services. And special services later became what they changed the name to, recreation services. Basically, I ran a club on a base in Mountain Home, Idaho, southern Idaho. And, I was doing morale. I was doing service to the guys who were stuck in the barracks 10 miles in the middle of the high desert, guys from all over the country. So it was sort of my destiny, I guess, to be of service and entertainment. And so I put a coffee house together. We had dances. I directed shows. I even went on the road. For the command level entertainment. They even had a talent show, and and we ended up in Las Vegas. Nellis Air Force Base is right there at the Strip, and so we ended up in Las Vegas, and it was just like, okay, I would never have attracted anything like that, but that's the way our destinies go. Things happen, and there it is. So that sort of got me going, and it was during those 4 years that I knew I wanted to be an actor at that point. 4 years is a long time when you're 18. And your other friends are going to college and all of that. Bless you. So, so I knew I wanted to go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. And that kept me going those 4 years. So, and I ended up, going to the American Academy and, 2 years of actor training there. And then post that, working as an actor and continue training. And that's how I met Margaret. They call her Miss R, Margaret Riddleberger. And that's how I got into, to really training as a real singer in the bel canto method, which is the Italian school of voice. So, yeah, exactly.
Half Italian.
Exactly. Che cosa fai? So that's the quick version of how I ended up writing a book called Intrinsic Singing, and everything else that I've done, and once I got into it, and once I really got into it seriously, I realized I did not want to work as an actor. I didn't want to earn my living that wasn't where I was going. This was personal development. This was developing David to the point where I could stand up on my own 2 feet and communicate and meet people and all of that. So that was really the heart of it. But singing was the beauty in my life, and music has been the beauty in my life, and so the book really was. I just felt an obligation or a vow or something to share what I learned,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise it would just die with her. When she passed, it was gone,
Yeah.
and no one else has written about it. So that's sort of the quick version.
That's a wonderful tribute to her and to your own journey. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And
Well,
I'm sorry, I just want to
no,
let you
it's not
know.
it's not a
I
problem,
love I love to sing, but my daughter says I don't sing well, so she
but
doesn't.
it's not but that's not what it's about. It's this is this doctor that whose work I used, Dr. Tomatis, was French,
Okay. Yes.
and he was really the first. This was the first neurofeedback. I mean, honestly, this was the
Mm-hmm.
real original, and vagus nerve and all of that. And
Right.
basically, what he said was your voice is what can recharge your nervous system. 80% of your voice, through bone conduction, which is really the basis of your voice,
Mm-hmm.
is bone conduction, not air conduction. Bone conduction of your voice is 10 times faster than your voice coming back to you in the air. And there's a relationship between them, but he's basically called it cortical recharge. So what I would notice after my lessons with Margaret, because she was very demanding, she really understood that we have defense mechanisms, and those defense mechanisms are protecting trauma from our past. And therefore, we're unable to go to these levels that are needed to really sing in your God-given voice. And so, so he understood that. And my interest has been, how do you get people past the trauma where the defense mechanisms got developed to protect the trauma inside them, but now you're kind of stuck? And my interest was, well, how? Because that's what I was learning with Margaret, and that became my interest. How do you get someone past the mechanisms that are protecting the trauma? Because as singers, we need to use these core muscles, what they call emotional muscles, what we can also call intrinsic muscles, intrinsic singing. And they are the initiatory muscles, and they take over in a survival situation. And the big ones on the outside do zero.
Okay.
They only do what they're told based on what's happening intrinsically. And the intrinsics hold fear, and it causes them to shut down or to close, and then it closes the joints. And now your body is not flexible and elastic, and that's what singing, or speaking and singing, because they're the same thing, that's what it demands. Dynamic relaxation, where there's elasticity and you have control, but it's not a forced control. It's more an expansive type control.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. So that's how I got into this. And honestly, I was struggling with my work with Margaret. And my friend Tom, who I was in a show with at the time at the Actors Collective, Sam Shepard show, Cowboys 2. Tom said to me one night offhandedly, he said, singers love Rolfing. And Rolfing is a technique of working with the connective tissue in the body and really bringing the body back to kind of back into the gravitational field where it's working for you rather than you're having to fight it. And it totally changed my voice.
Wow.
I had a moment in which Margaret was flabbergasted. We were working at the Ansonia Hotel and the Guild Rehearsal Studios there in New York City, 73rd and Broadway, big, beautiful, incredible building. And we were working in the room where it was the worst room in the Guild Rehearsal Studios. I mean, there was shag rug, and there was a weird shape in the room, and they had no resonance whatsoever. And suddenly The room was shimmering with resonance, and I was hardly doing anything. And it really showed me what the voice was. And this is why I say in the book, I saw that the book was the voice was not this linear thing that, mechanical linear point of view. It was suddenly nonlinear. It was the whole was greater than the sum of the parts. And that changed my life. That moment was a major shift in my life. And that's where my life took off from there. And I ended up 5 years later, getting certified as a Rolfer. And I worked with singers for almost 20 years in New York City, Broadway, opera, contemporary singers, basically freeing their body so they could find their real voice. And so that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to share that with people. The idea that
Fantastic.
This is what I discovered.
It's amazing. And you start with the early learning experiences where your teachers are telling you you're a moron, and you're like, no, I'm not.
Well, that was a big piece of it. And what I saw was I was a very, I don't know, nonconformist or something. I mean, that's what I discovered. I'm an odd character, and it's taken me a long time to understand that that's a good thing.
Yes. Not
to be conforming to the norm. You got to, to a degree, but to discover who you're meant to be as an individual, but able to be of service to other people, because, hey, life's tough. And we see that as we're going forward more and more, there's a lot more suffering. And anything we can do to provide some happiness and satisfaction to people, to me, that's what it's about. So I've always been in the service business, and I worked as a waiter to get through, to pay for my acting classes for many years in New York City, and continue to do shows, etc. Because most of us at that time, like 80-something% of actors had to have another job, and we just did what we were subsidizing our art. And that's very normal. And so here you go. Being of service has always been in my life. I delivered papers, I delivered food to people, and I delivered, Rolfing to them to help them, free their voice, basically. So
that is so fantastic. And you've continued that nonlinear dynamical journey.
Well, yes, I have.
In other ways as well.
It's true, because then I said, David, you're going to work with these people. You're dealing with trauma. Sometimes stuff comes up. That's how I got it. That's how I ended up getting a master's when we moved out west from New York. I went and got a master's in counseling psychology, and I already had a big background. I had been studying with Oscar Ichazo for many, many, many years, and he's really the nonlinear psychology, and it's pristine. There's nothing like it. It's unbelievable what he was teaching, and so I already had that background.
Right.
And then I kind of had this thing about neurofeedback, and something intuitively said, "Oh, neurofeedback." I looked for a number of years, and it didn't feel right to me, because I realized that they were sort of pushing and they were manipulating, and that's not. At that point, I realized with trauma, if you push past a certain threshold, you're going to drive it deeper. That's not understood very well. You can actually make it worse. So I had an instinct that said no. But when I had three colleagues who did not know one another, who told me about, well, at the time it was called NeuroCare. Mm-hmm. Now it's called Neuroptimal, but it was called NeuroCare, and Val and Sue Brown. And when I read what he was saying, I said, okay, this is it. And I sold my Martin guitar, my Martin guitar my boyhood Martin guitar, And my mother had let me borrow a little bit of money. I was having an issue at that time. And between those two, I was able to pay, I think it was $7,800 at that point to get the neurocare system, neurooptimal system. And that was 2007. And, and then that changed everything. And so, now I say, hey, there are performers who need and want and deeply desire to perform, but their performance anxiety is so enormous, that we need to help them surmount that panic that they're in, that they can't control, so they can do the thing that's going to nurture them. And so that's so that's how I got into the neurooptimal world in 2007. So don't ask me. It's like people look at me like, who is this guy? Like, does so many things. But for me, it's all connected. It's all connected to helping humans function in their life so they can actually be of service to other human beings, because we need some problem solvers at this point on the planet.
Yes.
That's my main thing. We're in trouble in a way, and we need, I'm a student of Bucky Fuller. I don't know if you know Buckminster Fuller.
Buckminster, yeah.
Bucky Fuller. And Bucky said there were, at the time when he was writing, 7 billion billionaires that haven't been told about their great fortune. But he also said there were 7 billion problem solvers in support of the integrity of the planet. And you don't have to ask anybody else what those problems are. You already know. So my whole thing has always been, get people standing on their own 2 feet, feeling good about themselves, feeling strong. And then they just have to look out, and they will naturally, intuitively know the thing that they're meant to engage with, basically. So,
yes.
So the same thing with the singer. I mean, you get up in front of people, it changes people's states, and that is enough to help somebody move out into the world and be of service to other people. Basically,
that's fast. It's fantastic and fascinating at the same time. I just absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So, Intrinsic Singing. You've got your book out.
Okay.
What is your game plan to get this candle lit in terms of spreading this information? Because this, to me, is so important and so vital, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk with you about it. It's just an amazing journey.
Well, again, my whole thing is, we're here to be of service, and there are a lot of singers. Today it's like singing is really big.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hearing really, from when the last decades, I've seen the change in the quality of voices in the world singers, and it's gotten really much better, but there's still a lot of ignorance out there, and there's still this mechanical view that you got to do something with your larynx, and you got to arch your palate, and that's not how it works, because singing and speaking are exactly the same physiological process. There's no difference. The difference is how much air you're dosing to sustain that vowel, but it's not mechanical in any way. In other words, I don't have to tell you how to talk. You already know. You say, hey, how you doing? Hey, man, hey, good to see you. What up? It goes so fine. And we're not thinking about how we're doing that. We know how to do it. We have these mirror neurons in the front of the brain that learn from direct experience with other people. This is how it works. So we don't have to. So basically, what I'm just sharing this so that those who have a deep desire to, essentially get up in front of other people and sing, because it's a beautiful thing. You look at an audience, you look at the audience face when there's a really great singer. People are in bliss. People have forgotten about their problems for that hour or whatever. And it just lets them be in the beauty of the vibration of that person's voice and personality. And to me, that's a very important stuff. So it's a healing potential. And so I just thought, David, you had this long training period and experience, and it was a tough time. And then you had this big jump that happened, and just share it with people. Just take the time to share it, and then see how you can get it out there for people to get it in their hands and sort of understand what the process of becoming a singer really is like, not superficially like I'm on these couple of Facebook things with singers, and these people will put their little video out of them singing, and they say, just tell me if I'm using my diaphragm. Well, if you're not using diaphragm, you're dead, because let me I'm having some kind of a Chrome issue right now. It wants me to force quit. I don't know why.
You're fine on this end.
Okay,
it is a bit laggy live, but fortunately we have local audio and video files, so I'll be able. We'll stay in we'll try to stay in Chrome as much as possible, so we can get those uploaded when we stop recording, and the replay will be good, clear.
Well, okay, this is what it's saying. It's saying your system has run out of application memory.
But I'm hearing you, so we may end it at 30 minutes instead of 40 because of the difficulty. I wanted to just say how much I appreciate your book and being here with you and talking with you about it, because I look at the intrinsic singing, the singing part, as a metaphor, because I'm not a professional singer, but the book is so important to me in terms of just life and living and finding my own voice. I'm a late bloomer, and took me 61 years to find out what I really wanted to do, although there have been things that I've enjoyed doing that are not okay. So it's telling me that David's browser's preventing recording. Just refresh the page if you can hear me. I'll put it in the chat. You gotta love technology. Here I'm singing in honor of David. Fat fingers. And if for some reason David is not able to have the little technical difficulties resolved for him, this has already been a magnificent podcast, and we'll ask him back for more. Try to ping him another. You gotta love technology. When it works, it's so magnificent, and when it doesn't, it's so frustrating. Again, slow typer, slow talker, slow walker. And then I'm going to let the folks at Riverside, the magnificent, wonderful folks, know at Riverside that we had a bit of a lag problem, and I know they can't do much with that, but maybe there's something they can do. So and I just have really enjoyed my time. He's just a sweetheart of a man. He's got so much information. He's such a brilliant guy. So, who wants to hear me? But David is the oldest of 8. Well, that's a big family. The youngest of 4. I'm going to try to reach him. I'm going to stop recording now, but I'm going to try to reach him and say, just refresh your browser. It's been a real treat. I hope you've enjoyed the wealth of information that David had to offer, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Wow, absolutely cracking good show, Craig and David. So much fun and so much learning going on in this episode. Until next time, and the next amazing episode of All Things Nonlinear Dynamical talks about the brain and human connection. Cheers and be well.